Benjamin Netanyahu believed the rules would bend, not because he believed he was innocent, but because he believed the machinery would stop before it ever reached him. That belief wasn't irrational. It was based on precedent. Because for decades, Western power has worked the same way. Accountability exists in theory, but enforcement is optional for allies. Courts investigate, reports are written, condemnations are issued, and then, quietly, the process stalls. Netanyahu had every reason to think this moment would follow that script. When the International Criminal Court began moving towards arrest warrants, the pressure arrived immediately. U.S. politicians issued warnings, sanctions were prepared, financial systems were being quietly weaponized. Judges connected to the case suddenly found that their bank cards no longer worked. Hotel reservations were canceled without any explanation. Careers, they were frozen in place. So this wasn't outrage, it was leverage. And then something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. The court didn't stop. The investigation, it continued. The warrants, they moved forward. And for the first time, a core Western ally failed to shut the process down. That moment matters. Not because anyone was arrested, but because the world learned something new. The rules didn't collapse. They exposed who still believes in them and who no longer controls them. So what we're watching is not a legal drama. It's a stress test of power. So in May of 2024, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, formally requested arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense minister. Now, the allegations focused on war crimes and crimes against humanity, including the use of starvation as a method of warfare in Gaza. The decision did not emerge from an abstract institution drifting on autopilot. It was made by a named individual acting under authority granted by treaty law, fully aware of the pressure that would inevitably follow. And the response, it revealed the real structure of the global system. The United States government under Donald Trump imposed direct sanctions on the ICC prosecutor and judges involved in the case. The judges! These sanctions were not symbolic. They were operational. They cut access to financial networks. They blocked routine economic activity. And they turned legal accountability into a personal liability. Now, that outcome occurred because U.S. officials chose to weaponize financial infrastructure to protect an ally. At the same time, Francesca Albanese, an amazing woman here, and the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories faced similar restrictions after publishing findings critical of Israeli conduct. Insurance reimbursements were denied, official travel bookings were canceled, and her ability to operate within the global system was deliberately constrained. These outcomes were not accidents. They were enforcement decisions. The incentive was unmistakable. Challenge Western allied power, and the system will isolate you. Now, Israel's government, backed by U.S. political pressure, of course, then launched a legal challenge aimed at halting the ICC investigation entirely. And the argument was familiar. Israel does not recognize the court's jurisdiction. Now, that challenge was reviewed by ICC appeals judges, and it was summarily rejected. The investigation, it continued. This outcome occurred because those judges chose not to yield despite the pressure. Not because enforcement was guaranteed, but because credibility was still being defended by individuals inside the system. Israel's jurisdictional argument failed for a straightforward reason. ICC authority flows from territory, not recognition. Palestine is a recognized member of the court. Alleged crimes committed on that territory fall within its jurisdiction. This interpretation has already been applied consistently, including to Hamas leaders, one of whom was also named in an arrest warrant proceedings before being killed. So the rules were not rewritten, they were applied. What changed was who they applied to. And that is where the deeper fracture appears. Now, in 2024, David Cameron, he was then serving as Britain's foreign secretary. He reportedly held a phone call with prosecutor Karim Khan. Now, according to reporting, later confirmed through legal submissions and freedom of information disclosures, Cameron warned that issuing arrest warrants against Israeli leaders would be like dropping a hydrogen bomb. This was not rhetorical language. It was institutional pressure. And Cameron reportedly warned that the United Kingdom would withdraw funding from the ICC and leave the Rome Statute altogether if the warrants proceeded. Now, that outcome would have had occurred because, where it would have occurred, because a named Western official chose political protection over legal obligation. This matters because the UK is not a peripheral actor. It's a founding ICC member. It incorporated ICC obligations into domestic law. Civil servants reportedly advised respect for treaty commitments. Those warnings were ignored. So if these allegations are accurate, and they have not been formally denied, then a Western government attempted to interfere with an independent judicial process it is legally bound to support. So this is not just a moral failure alone, it's a strategic one. The West has spent decades telling the global South that institutions, law, and rules create stability. That credibility depends entirely on consistent enforcement. So what this episode produced instead was clarity. Rules apply until they don't. Accountability exists until it threatens power. Institutions are defended until they act independently. And that signal did not go unnoticed. Countries across Africa, Latin America, and Asia, many of whom have long experienced selective enforcement, are watching Western governments confirm what was only once implied. All right, guys. So do I have this all right? Do I have it all wrong? Let me know in the comments section before. I look forward to reading and replying to your guys' comments. And thank you again so much for watching me here on The Baseline. All right. Cheers, everybody.